ahead and get started. We got our attendees. I think everyone's in there. Great. Okay. Well, welcome. We're excited to have you here for our webinar. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Erica Dial, the CEO of the Maple Valley Black Diamond Chamber. Before we get started with our candidate forum today, I'd like to make a quick announcement, and then I'm going to introduce Brian Kane from MultiCare Covington Medical Center. They are our sponsor today, and so a big thank you to you, Brian, and to MultiCare for sponsoring. First, a quick reminder to everyone, we have a virtual auction that's starting on Monday, October 26th through the 30th. We have got great items out there. We're going to be sending the link out. Check out our Facebook page. It's just kind of a fun little way. We normally have a gala, but we couldn't do it in person, and we're just another way to kind of promote our members, and we really appreciate that. So kind of keep an eye out for your information about that. And so Brian, here we are. Okay, so I think there you are. I'd like to introduce Brian. Brian Kane serves as the Assistant Administrator for MultiCare Auburn and Covington Hospitals. Brian joined MultiCare in 2016 as Director of Rehabilitation Services at Puyallup Good Samaritan Hospital. His 17 years of healthcare experience includes management, operations, and program development. He holds a bachelor's degree in biology from Walla Walla University and an MBA from the University of Redlands in California. Brian is based at MultiCare Covington Medical Center, and he began his new role in March, just in time to help Covington and Auburn hospitals navigate how to care for our community during a unique and deadly virus. Brian's wife have 3 young children and a clutch of chickens they raised over the summer. They're in the cool eating the eggs they raised phase of this project. I love it. Thank you, Brian. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Before I start, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. Okay, perfect. I've been on a number of these meetings, and there's nothing worse than sitting here talking to yourself with nobody able to hear you. So, and thank you, Erica, for that introduction. Thank you. Yes, my name is Brian Kane, and I want to thank you for allowing me to come in and join your meeting and speak on behalf of MultiCare Health System. I am the Assistant Administrator for South King County. And basically what that means is I oversee the operations for both Covington and Auburn Medical Centers. I did start in this new role for South King County back in March, right when COVID was really starting to ramp up. Luckily for me, I have been with MultiCare since 2016, so it wasn't tremendously difficult to jump in and hit the ground running, trying to help with the pandemic stuff. MultiCare's history, however, we date back to 1882, much longer than I've been around, with our first hospital in Tacoma. In the years since, we have grown to provide services across the Puget Sound region in Pierce and King counties, and most recently in Inland Northwest and also into Idaho. We have a very broad view of the Northwest, considering Idaho, Oregon, Alaska, all these areas to be part of that bigger picture of the Northwest. MultiCare is dedicated to partnering with the communities where we live and to work to provide good health care. We've had a presence in South King County since the early 1990s, when we opened outpatient medical centers, urgent cares, physician offices in the area, including Covington, Kent, and Auburn. Back in 2012, we opened the Covington Emergency Department. And then 2 years ago, we expanded this emergency department to actually include a hospital now, a 4-story, 58-bed hospital. And this is in addition to our hospital in Auburn. We also have 27 Indigo urgent care clinics across the state, including newly opened locations in Maple Valley, Lakeland Hills, plus locations in Covington and Federal Way. Now that we're well established here, we have plans to grow so we can provide a broader range of care and services to the people in the community. We want to provide you quality care right here at home. No need to brave I-5 to travel to Seattle. You can just do it right here in your backyard. South King County has a growing population, and our residents need quality health care. As we've done for nearly 150 years, MultiCare is working to meet those needs, and we are in a good financial position to do so. There are several exciting projects in the planning stages that we will be talking about over the next few months. But here, I just want to give you a bit of a preview on some of those items, especially the ones happening here at Covington Hospital. The caveat to this, there are a few more steps that we have to go through, as with everything, some hoops we got to jump through before we can actually break ground with these projects, but we are very, very, very close. First off, we're planning to bring 2 new operating rooms online in the next few months at Covington. I won't get into the fine details, but this will mean changing and updating a range of support functions and services in the hospital. This is in addition to our 3 operating rooms we currently have at Covington. This will ultimately allow us to offer additional general surgeries, as well as the ability to grow our total joint and orthopedic service lines. As part of this, we're already expanded our ortho clinics, adding 5 new physicians, 2 orthopedic doctors for total joint care, 2 physicians for sports medicine, and next year a hand surgeon is coming on board. Also planned for South King County, MultiCare is planning to add 18 new physicians over the next 2 years. These are much needed primary care physicians. Right now we have 49 primary care physicians for South King County. This will bring that up by an additional 18 more. And these are in much needed primary care. I just want to stress that fact. This will bring more options for care, more open opportunities for appointments, and ultimately healthier families in our community. We'll have offices on Kent Kangley Road, Black Diamond, and Federal Way. Down the road in Auburn, we're near the final stages of getting approval to expand our bed capacity under the existing license at that hospital as well. More to come on this soon, but this project will also support the overall growth in surgery capacity for the South King County region. One exciting note for Auburn, last summer, we opened our state-of-the-art cardiac catheterization lab. This is not something you plan to use, but in the event of a major heart attack, it's very nice to know that we have this in our backyard. We can provide this, and this is actually the one of its kind on the West Coast. There's no other one like it on the West Coast right now, so completely state-of-the-art. I don't have to tell you that healthy people make for healthier communities. It's a tough thing right now as we continue with the COVID-19 pandemic and with flu season at our doorstep. We want you all to know that we're committed to being a strong partner to build a healthy community. At MultiCare, we continue our journey to build on the experience through training and education opportunities for our staff. With that, I'll say that we are proud to support the Maple Valley Black Diamond Chamber and the surrounding communities. Thank you very much for allowing me to have a moment of your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Great, thank you, Brian. If anybody has a question for Brian, if you feel free to put it in the chat. We'll see. It is nice, definitely nice to have, you know, a hospital close here in Maple Valley. We really appreciate it. Okay, I am not seeing anything. So I think what we'll do is we'll move on and we will get started. If there is a question, we'll make sure Brian can get in touch with you and answer that for you. In the meantime, want to move into our candidate forum. As you know, we run these typically in the evenings for the public, but today we're going to be doing it virtual and sharing it with our community. So, and the person who normally or always has done our candidate forum, at least since I've been around, which has been 5 years already, is Griffin Casey. So Griffin, if you want to pop on in, and I will read Griffin's bio here, and then the candidate forum started. So as many of you know, Griffin has been a moderator and she's passionate about civics and she did a fantastic job and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. She is, for those of you that don't know Griffin, she is an attorney with Casey and Grove Law offices here in Maple Valley. She was raised in Black Diamond and attended Tahoma Senior High School and went on to graduate from the University of Washington. She earned her master's in education from Central High School before attending law school. Griffin and her husband have returned to the Maple Valley Black Diamond area to raise their 2 daughters and to work. Griffin's law practice is focused on estate planning and probate, business law, and real property. Griffin continues to enjoy working in the classroom as well and dedicates quite a bit of time to our local We the People program whenever possible. So Griffin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the candidates for being here. We appreciate your flexibility as we adapt to how COVID is changing the election this year. Regardless of not being able to meet in public, it's just so important that the constituents out here have an opportunity to meet you as best possible right now. For me, the hope is that they can increase their level of civic engagement beyond the voters pamphlet and social media. And so this is a chance to just get a sense of who you are and see how you respond to the questions. One thing that we like the public to know as you attend is that this is the Chamber of Commerce Forum event, and we host this for the community at large. But a lot of the way we approach the questions is from that chamber perspective. And so rather than casting a super wide net, we do look specifically at matters that affect the business community, economic health of a region, and other elements like education or transportation. So we take our approach to the questions through that lens. And the way we curate the questions is through the board of directors itself. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes time to putting together these questions. And we also gather questions from the community. So they're not just coming from me or from one single person. It's a collective effort. So with that, let's move into the actual forum process itself. And the first thing we're going to do is invite each of the candidates to take 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And what I would ask or challenge you to do is, beyond your standard introduction, add in something that just is different about you or that sets you apart, that our constituents would not be able to know by reading the voter's pamphlet. What's something unique? So let's go ahead and start. And let's start with Bill. We'll start with you, Bill Ramos.
Thank you very much, Griffin, for having this, and the Chamber for sponsoring this event, and all of you for attending and taking your valuable time to listen to us. Most of you in the district here know me already. I've been around a long time, over 30 years. I've been involved in the community. I'm a chamber member in Issaquah. I've been on 3 different city commissions. I've been on Issaquah City Council, and I'm a state representative. So I work really hard to represent all our communities from Maple Valley to Black Diamond and the southern part of the district. And I do that working with the things you want and need. And we talk with city councils and bring funding to projects that we need. An example of this is the Lake Wilderness parking lot paving that we got funding to help with, and also the Veterans Memorial. So as I work for different cities, the Association of Washington Cities did give me a Cities Champion Award because I work really hard to represent all 7 cities in the district. And I know very much that Highway 18 is a big concern for our district. That's why I'm on the Transportation Committee, and happy to announce that hopefully this spring, we will start the actual construction on the Highway 18 I-90 interchange. And then we're continuing to work on the transportation package to get the funding to continue to widen to 4 lanes all over the top of the Tiger Mountain down to Issaquah Hobart Road. So we're working with that because I know that's a major concern in our community. I'm also working with many other things you care about: policing policy reform, climate change, and again, the transportation package. So just take a look at my website, voteramos.org. You'll see well over 100 endorsements. This shows how I'm working with the community and everybody else to try to get good results for us, because nobody does this alone. The legislature is a group body that has to work together, and I'll continue to work to represent you the best I can. Thank you very much for taking your time for attending.
Great. Thank you so much. And then we're going to turn to your opponent. Ken, if you would like to introduce yourself, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ken Moninsky. I'm the Republican candidate for state representative in position 1. I'm a small businessman. In one of my business roles, I'm the repossession guy for the airline industry. So I have to go around the world and pick up airplanes every once in a while when people don't pay their lease payments. So there's a little known fact. I've lived in Maple Valley with my wife, my 2 daughters for over 10 years. And I decided to run in this election because I really wanted to give the voters of the 5th district, a real choice, something that stands in contrast to Representative Ramos's record. And I think we need to look at his record a little bit closer because he said very little about his vision for our future. Representative Ramos' big legislative accomplishment is this carbon sequestration bill, which he mentions quite a bit. It actually is just a bill that expresses the intent of the legislature. It doesn't really have a lot of impact on our lives. That's unless, of course, he and Jay Inslee can pass a progressive job-killing carbon tax. Bill Ramos typically toes the big government line. He votes with the Democrat majority 98% of the time. And I just believe, and the reason I'm running, I don't think we need a rubber stamp to represent us in Olympia. Not especially at a time when families and businesses are really struggling to recover from this pandemic. I want to bring balance and common sense back to state government. I will work with anybody who shares my vision of a growing and vibrant economy, education system that puts the children first, and a Washington where we can secure the health and safety of all of our citizens. You have a real choice this year in all of the legislative seats, including a write-in candidate in Corey Bailey in position 2. So let's send a businessman to Olympia and make sure that your voices can be heard above those of the special interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And now we are going to turn to the Washington State Senate race for the 5th LD, and we're going to start with Mark Mullen. Mark.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Griffin. And I was born and raised in Tukwila and went to Foster High School. I guess my little known fact is Brian mentioned he went to University of Redlands in California, and that's where I went my first 2 years of college. So I played tennis there. So I'm gonna have to circle back with Brian to see. I don't remember seeing Brian there, but he could be younger than me. I don't know. When I first ran for the Senate back in 2012, to me, this job's about listening. And when I listened to the residents of Maple Valley, there was 2 big issues that came up. One was Highway 18, the fact that for people to get to work was taking like an hour longer than it should. And the other was this whole issue around the donut hole property, whether or not there was going to be 1,600 homes kind of jammed in there by King County and Dow Constantine. And, through listening to the people in Maple Valley, we were able to make huge strides on both of those issues. I mean, we obviously had the city control zoning of the donut hole, which is how we got to Houma High School there instead of those 1,600 high density units. And in terms of Highway 18, we've gotten $150 million to start the project. But going forward, 2021 is going to be the make or break year on Highway 18. I think there will be a transportation package. There's only going to be probably 3 mega packages in the entire state, maybe 4 that get in that package. And my focus is making sure that the $300 million we need to actually finish that project. So it's 4 lanes all the way from I-90 to Squaw Road that we get that done. And that's going to be priority number 1 in the 2021 session. I think priority number 2 is getting our kids safely back into the classroom. I mean, if we don't have them there by the time session starts on January 11th, the legislature needs to pass a bill to provide financial resources, but that's what they need for PPP. And if they need flexibility to look at how long they're going to be in school, we might have to adjust the length of the school day, but we need to find a way to get kids back in school. And those are going to be my focuses and getting our small businesses back to work. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Now we're going to turn to you, Ingrid, to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. So something that you might not know about me is I was a small business owner. I opened up a small business in downtown North Bend when I was 17 years old, almost 18, and was able to keep the doors open for 5 years with my friend. We started in a small little hole in the wall off Main Street that was 300 square feet. And after our second year of business, we were able to expand to an 1,100 square foot business. We opened up a coffee shop. We taught art lessons out of our shop. And we also helped revitalize the downtown North Bend area as it was very shy of active businesses at the time. A lot of the shops were vacant when we first opened. So that's something you might not know about me. It was a long time ago, but I'm very proud of it. Other things about me is I am a nurse and a mom. I've lived out in Snoqualmie Valley almost all my life, over 30 years now. And I'm lucky enough to live in the house next door to where I grew up, where my parents still live today. As a nurse, I have experience in emergency medicine, psychiatry, and I also am a sexual assault forensic nurse examiner. And these experiences are a perspective that's currently lacking in our state Senate. If I am elected, I will be the only nurse in the state Senate at a time where we need somebody with intricate knowledge of the structural issues of our healthcare system, an understanding of how legislation can really translate to improved health outcomes versus just looking good on paper. I have had the privilege of helping work in Olympia as a volunteer with the Washington State Nurses Association Political Action Committee, where I served as the vice chair. And I worked with people in the state Senate and the House of Representatives to pass amazing legislation that helped address healthcare reform and patient advocacy and workers' rights. And I'm very proud of that work that I did and the relationships that I built. I think now is a time where we really need leadership that is different than the leadership that we needed of yesterday. We need somebody who has an intricate understanding of the healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and we are going to hear from Jesse Jensen, but that will be later in the forum. And so we will have him introduce himself at that time when he joins. So now what we're going to do is turn to the question portion of the forum. There will be 8 questions total. So there will be 4 questions for each position. And what we're going to do is we will alternate between the race between Bill and Ken, and then the race between Mark and Ingrid. So we'll start first with our question. It'll be a question for those running for Senate. And so we are going to invite Mark, you to answer first. Specifically, we're concerning childcare in this question. Childcare and returning to school is an essential component to any economic recovery plan. Yet Washington State has a critical lack of childcare available to working adults, making it difficult for them to return to work as businesses start to reopen. This could be getting even worse as some childcare facilities are closing due to an inability to stay open. Not to mention the role that school closures play. How do you propose to support this critical industry of childcare and getting parents back to work? You may begin and you have 2 minutes.
Oh, it's a great question.
Excuse me, 1 minute.
But I think the nexus there is our first step is to make sure we're getting those youngest kids back into our elementary schools. I mean, I look at K through 2 as, to me, as the starting point. I know Tahoma was planning on getting the kids back in person, you know, would have started on Monday of this week, and that obviously got delayed again. And I think that, to me, in the childcare front, the easiest place the state can move the needle is to lay out that very first week of session on January 11th. Just say, what do we need to provide? Like, if it's PPP, well, let's provide it. If it's, you know, more flexibility, let's provide it. But let's make sure we have a path to get kindergartners through second graders back into school by the end of January. I mean, that, I don't see how we can get our economy back going again if we're sitting around in session talking about, you know, we have a long-term goal. We need to build out childcare access in the state. But when we get there January 11th, we're gonna have a short-term problem, which is getting our current kids back in public school.
Great, thank you. And Ingrid, you now have 1 minute to respond.
So 1 minute isn't terribly long, but some issues that we have to look at is also regulations. Even before COVID, there was a lot of regulations on our early learning centers that made it very cumbersome for a lot of facilities to open. And so I think it's important to look at, are there regulations that may be well-intentioned, but are not necessary for high quality education? And can we look at reducing some of those regulations so that it reduces the barrier to opening up facilities? So that's something that was present even before COVID, but obviously we now have to look at a whole new aspect and look at proper PPE and how do we support people. A lot of times, and I hope this doesn't happen this fall, but we may also have another shortage of PPE again. So how can we as a state help support these groups so that we can have not just high quality education for our early learners, but also so that their parents can go back to work? This is essential and something that I firsthand had to struggle with because I don't have the luxury of going to telecommute since I work at a hospital, and so does my husband. I know firsthand the barriers. Thank you.
And I think I forgot to mention at the start of this, for the organization, it'll go 1 minute, 1 minute, and a 30-second rebuttal. And if folks at home are curious how that balances out, to be fair, for each of the questions, twice Mark will start first, and then the other 2, Ingrid will start first. So there's equal playing field there. So we'll turn to Mark for a 30-second follow-up if there's anything else that you'd like to address, either in response to her answer or something else.
I just think, to me, this is one of my biggest frustrations with Governor Inslee not calling us back to do a special session over the summer, was this exact issue. I mean, we could have solved this problem. I think we could have laid out a safe way to try to get our kids back into school when school resumed last month. And I think, you know, I know what was important to the residents of Maple Valley. And to be honest, that's why I butted heads with Inslee on this exact issue of saying we should be in there and laying out a plan to do this. We shouldn't be waiting till January 11th to solve this problem. There's too many families, you know, having a hard time with the status quo right now.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move to question 2. And so we will be hearing from our candidates for position 1 of the House of Representatives. And we're going to start with Bill Ramos. The question I would like to have you answer is this. Our current political environment is highly volatile. I think we all know that. What is your track record for effective bipartisan work resulting in actual change? Please be specific. In the event you have not served an elected position, what is your professional past that demonstrates competency of this skill set? You may begin, Bill.
Thank you very much, excuse me, for that question. And that's exactly what it takes to work in the legislature. You need to work with everybody. And I've proven that with taking, mentioned before, carbon sequestration, a very partisan topic, very controversial, and getting unanimous vote. That is incredible. And I've been working with many Republicans across the aisle. They call me up, say, hey, can we work together on this? How can we work on this? Where do we find agreement on that? And I've actually carried amendments for Republicans onto some of the bills that they've wanted. So it's just that working back and forth, finding the common ground, what is part of the issue that you have the agreement on, and then work on that piece of it. So carbon sequestration is just a phenomenal one that people can disregard if they want, but it's a start of how to deal with climate change. And that is the basis of the argument of getting everybody to the table to talk. Once we have that basic agreement, now we can work on the bigger issue of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to you, Ken. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a politician and I haven't been elected to office before. I have had pretty good professional experience, whether it be working on nonprofit boards or even in some of my past professional positions where I've worked in very diverse work environments, whether you talk about them being racially diverse or, certainly being one of the few conservatives in the room. But I've always achieved results. And I find that when you get people together and you come up with a common goal or something to work towards, you can focus in on that one thing, set aside your differences, and you're able to move forward. I look forward to being elected as your representative and working with across the aisle, obviously with Representative Callan and with Representative Mullet or Ms. Anderson, especially on transportation, on healthcare, and a number of other pressing issues in this district. Thanks.
Thank you. And Bill, for a 30-second rebuttal.
Yes, and just to talk about this, the legislature is a very different body than business. And I think we've learned that in the past, that business doesn't always translate really well because it is a legislative body, a contemplative body that you have to, it's designed to move slow for people to work together, to listen, to find that common ground and come up with a solution that works for all. And we find that most issues, you usually can find 60, 70% of the issue you have agreement on, and then you have to work the edges from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to turn back to our Senate race, and Ingrid, we will begin with you. And I would like to discuss transportation, specifically the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding I-976. So let's address the recent Supreme Court ruling overturning Initiative 976. Voters have clearly stated that they want $30 car tabs. However, this initiative was overturned as unconstitutional by our Supreme Court. This is a natural risk in our state with having a process that allows citizen-drafted initiatives. There is a chance that initiatives can make it to a vote, but there is no accountability to see if the initiative is implementable or if it's constitutional. This creates voter frustration as many voters do not understand the gap in this process. Please address the recent ruling and your position on $30 car tabs and transportation funding.
Thank you. So this is such a good question. I actually did not support the $30 car tabs, but that's me as a constituent because I knew the importance of having that revenue for our transportation budget and how much we really did need that, especially with some of the pressing issues that we have right now. On the flip side, my job as a state senator will be to also listen to the people. Right? It's not just about what I want, but it's about what my community wants. And it's my job to honor that and listen to that. And if people come to me, we will look at ways to draft legislation, although I do think we really do need that money. And I would try to educate people on that. We have a really big opportunity to pass a transportation infrastructure package, and it's critically important that our local needs are met. And that is going to cause, that needs revenue to do that. As a daily commuter back and forth to Bellevue, I know the problems that people are going through. as they're trying to get back and forth to work. And this is a real barrier for many people, as we often live in a region that is a commuter region. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Yep. And unlike our upcoming national, we don't mute, but we will, just as time comes up, we'll wrap it up and move over. So Mark, 1 minute.
Well, I think that every initiative we have in this district, I look at how this district votes, and I feel it's my job to go down to Olympia and take that into full consideration. Our district did not vote for the $30 project. It failed by 10%. I think that one of the differences, I think, between Ingrid and myself is, our district voted on charter schools in 2012. They made it very clear that our district supported charter schools as well. And, that's been one of the big differences with my opponent, is she's very clear that she doesn't support charter schools, even though the district did vote for them. I think my promise to the people is, what's clear to me is that having one lump sum bill seems to be a problem for a lot of people. And so my takeaway is, when we go into our session, we have to look at forms of transportation funding that maybe don't have the lump sum bill associated with them. And to me, the fine line is, I think if a community chooses to support something locally, like a $20 tap fee they know stays in their city, I want to support that. But I think that the state at their level has to look at other ways we can support transportation without putting it all on tabs.
Thank you. And Ingrid, a response?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to question 4, and Ken, we will begin with you. And so question number 4 is, how would you evaluate the different needs that each city faces in a district as large as the 5th legislative district? What works for Maple Valley may not be the best for Snoqualmie. Please address how you plan to hear and address all of your constituent needs.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very diverse district in terms of, suburban and rural and everything. It's large and has different constituencies. And I think, the best way is, again, to interact with the city councils, and with the various civic organizations that are within those communities. Listen to their needs, find out if they think it's a good idea for the local businesses to be burdened by new taxes and regulation, figure out how any proposed legislation on climate change is going to impact their futures, talk about the push to, get students educated and back in the classroom. So, I mean, I think you just have to make yourself available, be a good listener, and then translate that into some real actionable items when you get into the legislature in Olympia.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you. Those that haven't been involved with our communities don't know that before every session and after every session, and usually sometime before in the interim, I meet with almost every city, whether it's the city councils or the representatives of them, as mayors, and we talk about all those things that each city needs and wants to work on. And so we're in constant communication, so we know the differences. And that's why, how I work really hard to do that. And then most of those cities have representatives in Olympia when we're working to update what's happening and how we're working on those issues. So that's why I mentioned before, the Association of Washington Cities gave me a Cities Champion Award, because I work really hard to make sure that every city gets represented, and I bring back the projects that they need and ask for and request. That's a critical piece of representing the district. And you're right, every city is different across the district, from almost up to Duval down to Enumclaw, and we have to work really hard to keep that all in mind. Thank you.
Ken, do you have a response? Follow
Yeah,
up?
I mean, I guess I would just add is, Representative Ramos has been in the legislature for 2 years. I mean, I certainly think, that this is something that could be done by a Republican or a Democrat in the legislature. And again, the other piece is, it's not just dealing with the city governments. There's a private sector in these communities that have needs and views on issues as well. And that, I think, is where Representative Ramos has fallen down a little bit on addressing some of those. Thanks.
Thank you. We're moving into question 5 now, and we're going to start with you, Mark Mullet. And question number 5 has to do with state revenues impacted by COVID. What plan do you have to recoup any lost state tax revenues due to the economic shutdown resulting from COVID? would raising the B&O tax be part of your plan?
So I'm against raising the B&O tax. I voted against it in 2019. It's obviously one of the reasons I have a primary challenger. I mean, I think that I'm the last in the Senate Democratic Caucus. Like, I'm the last small business owner there. I mean, I have my pizza restaurant, my ice cream store. I'm the only one signing the front side of a paycheck every 2 weeks. I mean, my entire argument I've been making all summer, and I'm telling people I'm getting traction on this, is explaining to my colleagues how much unemployment insurance rates are already going up on the business community just without anybody passing another new tax down there. And so we're going to be hit already with higher unemployment insurance rates, the small business community is. The last thing we want is people now coming at us from another angle, hitting another new tax. And obviously the B&O tax would be a total disaster. You know, my sales in my Bell Square, Ben and Jerry's were down 80% in July, 80%, not like 20% lower than last year. They were 80% lower than last year. And so I think there are so many small business owners right now who are just trying to find a way to survive the next summer. And if the legislature comes in and puts insult on top of injury, I mean, that's the worst thing we could be doing right now. We have to support them, not make it their life harder.
Thank you. Ingrid?
So my understanding is when the B&O tax was increased, it was rushed through the process and resulted in an increase in burden to small and medium-sized businesses, while major corporations were capped at 9 million. That's my understanding. And that kind of puts the burden on our everyday mom and pop shops who are already struggling to get by. Even before COVID, for many of them, it's very hard to run a small business. So I think we also need to look at finding ways to reduce that burden and changing that. And also see if for new businesses, can there be a grace period in filing so that they can get their feet underneath them? Can we change the threshold for, increase the threshold for filing to help people who are just barely getting by? There's a lot of different things that we could look to help support our small businesses in regards to the B&O tax system, which is part of our regressive tax code as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a response, Mark, or anything you want to add?
I think the main challenge to me last year was when we did our state employee collective bargaining. I mean, if every state employee got a COLA increase, like a 2.1% increase, that was going to cost us $600 million. But the governor did a $1.6 billion collective bargaining agreement. So all the new taxes that were laid out last year, it was all on the back of the governor's collective bargaining agreement. And I think when we're coming out of COVID, we have to really look at the collective bargaining agreements to make sure we're doing ones that are fair, but also ones that we can actually afford, that we don't have to create a bunch of new taxes to actually honor them.
Great. Thank you. We're going to now move to question number 6, and we will start with you, Bill Ramos. And the question's about homelessness. Homelessness is a big issue right now. There are several causes: addiction, mental health, finance, and more. If you could address one of those issues and make the biggest impact on homelessness, what would it be? And what is your plan, if any, to address our homelessness issue?
Thank you for that. I think the homelessness issue, finally, I think folks realize it is across the board. It's not just in a few urban centers. It is critical across the state and the country. And we need to look at that. I think some of the, what we know for sure, that what we've done in the past is not working. COVID has brought some things to light of opening people's minds to try some new methods. And those are critical to do that. You know, in our area, things are exacerbated because of pricing, right? Because housing is so expensive. So that just adds a burden to folks that maybe would make it, but it just can't quite get there. So we have to help all the local areas to do that. We put, last year, we put 175 million into the affordable housing funds. We really need to get the affordable housing going so that we don't lose any more ground, and we need to protect the affordable homes we have right now from being redeveloped or upgraded so that we lose those. So maintaining what we have is a critical piece. Thank you.
Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things with homelessness. One is we need a better system to increase the overall supply of residential housing units, because increased supply will obviously bring down the overall cost of housing and hopefully allow more people to transition into it. The other piece is that, you know, we've seen already a policy that didn't work, and that is what they're doing in King County, where the Seattle-dominated King County Council just increased the sales tax to pay for for buying hotels for the homeless, something that they were allowed to do because Representative Ramos and other legislators changed the law so that it didn't have to go to the voters. Another example, again, of moving what should be local decisions into a one-size-fits-all state policy. Thankfully, we have elected leaders closer to home, like Mayor Kelly here in Maple Valley, Mayor Ralph in Kent, that are going to keep those monies for themselves and hopefully redeploy them in concert with other communities to better serve the homeless population. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a response, Bill?
Yes, one of the things that people forget that there's a social equity issue here, that see that a lot of the homeless folks are folks of color, and things there's some things we need to work on there. But I think the big point is that, and I talked to many cities, that the ability to get some funding to work locally for your homeless affordable housing is a critical piece. And I encourage all of them to take that local funding so they could keep control of it and work with the county in unison versus having the county have control of that. So that was a good thing they did.
Thank you. Question number 7, we are going to turn to Ingrid first. It has to do with police and potential calls for policy reform, or not potential calls, but calls for policy reform. So currently there are issues within policing. Many members of the Chamber of Commerce are small business owners who must deal with operational challenges such as shoplifting. Possible budget changes can have a systemic impact on how crimes such as shoplifting are handled. Can you please address your position on policing and policy reform, just big picture?
The big picture is I do not support defunding the police. I've worked very closely with the Bellevue Police for over a decade now, and I have seen the critical services that they provide to our community as well as the healthcare providers. We've had to work very closely together dealing with mental health patients as well as violent patients. So I've seen the amazing work that they do. One of the big problems, though, is that we expect them to wear too many hats. And one of the issues that we have is that we have a desperate need to address our mental health crisis, and our police and fire departments are ill-equipped to properly do that. So I do believe we need to look at building and implementing a fourth leg to our 911 system that involves mental health and crisis workers. And I think this will directly reduce the risk of increased force. It'll also reduce the risk of unnecessary incarceration, because a lot of times people with mental health needs don't get to the place where they need to be, such as the hospital. Instead, a lot of times they end up in our prison systems and our jails, which is very expensive for our communities to bear that cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the very first forum Ingrid and I did together in June was with a far left group, the Indivisibles, and we were asked the exact same question. Do you support what's happening in Seattle around defunding? And she said yes. And so that was in the first week of June. So I think it's, you know, this is the thing. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. Like, I've been very clear, whether I'm talking to a chamber group or I'm talking to a far left group, I get the same answer at every group. And that's that I've never thought it's a good idea. I've always made the analogy. I've been on the education committee for all 8 years in the Senate. We have a struggling school district. We don't defund them. We provide extra financial resources along with accountability. And you can, that's how you turn things around, is support and accountability combined together. And that's what I feel we can do. I think Representative Ramos has been working on this issue. I think there's a lot of improvements we can make in our police force, but defunding is something that's never made sense. And I said that the first week of June, and I say it again now in mid-October.
Thank you. Ingrid?
Absolutely. So that's a false claim. I never said I supported defunding. What I did say is at the time there was a petition going around that a lot of the legislative representatives had signed. I had heard about it, but not read it in full entirety. But it was talking about demilitarization and finding ways to collect data and have that be accessible, and also reducing extreme force, as well as finding de-escalation training. That is very different than defunding. That is supporting change without defunding. I do not support that.
Thank you. So now we're going to turn to our last question, question number 8. And Ken, we will start with you. Would you favor any type of liability protections for businesses serving the public during a pandemic? Should someone have the misfortune of contracting the COVID virus due to eating in a restaurant, should the restaurant be financially accountable? Similarly, should employers be liable in the event of an employee contracting the virus? This is obviously a big can of worms, questions that could go in a lot of directions, but we would love to just have you address accountability for businesses regarding COVID. Ken, we'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, I believe that the liability issue is one of the big issues that's going to have to be dealt with in order to have businesses kind of come back and grow again. It's probably, in my opinion, it's probably something that's hopefully is going to have to happen on the federal level once we get people like Jesse Jensen in office. But at the state level, yes, we should be providing some sort of immunity for businesses. You know, we know that the schools are going to have similar immunity. I'm sure they should have the opportunity to reopen their business as long as they're following some safe protocols, which L&I has already demonstrated an ability to deal with at that level. I think we can give them liability and remove that friction from the environment that they're going to need to come back, hire workers, and hopefully be successful in the future.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you. This is where I think sometimes we get a little bit the cart ahead of the horse. We have to work to get our businesses open. We have to work to help them set up those protocols and do business properly. If you're doing business properly, following the protocols, masking, working with your employees, your customers, everything, you have a system that's working, and it's doesn't create a big liability if you're following set protocols. So we need to work with the businesses to get those going and work to follow through with all the things they need. That's the issue, is helping them get started. And to take some folks and say, oh, we're just going to make them immune from something, that doesn't force the accountability part. Like Senator Muller was talking, we have to have that accountability. Our system, no one's in court yet. This has not become a issue that is stopping businesses yet. So I think we need to just continue to work with businesses the way the protocols are going now and keep those going.
Great, thank you. So that concludes our 8 questions for.
Do I get a rebuttal?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, absolutely. So sorry. Ken, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't believe Representative Ramos really answered the question. The issue is, first of all, yeah, a lot of it will be taken care of. If there's a super spreader event at a Denny's, no one's going to go back there. They'll probably go out of business. But the question is about whether one person getting sick, when it's going to be difficult to trace that back to the restaurant, should put a small business owner out of business. And I think we need to offer as much protection as we can to give these folks a chance to rejoin the economy and hopefully create jobs and be successful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So now that concludes the end of our 8 questions for the state Senate race, as well as the position 1 House of Representatives race for the 5th legislative district. And what we'll do is we will let each of the candidates make a closing remark of 1 minute each. And so we will start with the Senate race, and Ingrid, you may begin.
Thank you. So I'm really glad I got to have the opportunity to be here with you today. I hope you learned a little bit more about me. I think something I really want to stress right now is that we are in unprecedented times right now, and we need leadership that is looking for the time that we're in. We are trying to grapple with how to have a robust statewide pandemic response that thus should lead to our economic recovery. If we don't have a strong state response, it will prolong our economic recovery and cripple our businesses, hurt our children who are not going to be able to go back to school. We need somebody who has the understanding of the healthcare system and the intricacies that we are looking at right now. And I will be the only nurse, if elected, in the state Senate able to provide that experience at a time where we desperately need that. I hope that you guys will go ahead and check out my website. It's www.ingridforstatesenate.com. It has a lot of issues I'm running on and all of the many endorsements that I've received. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Mark, we'll turn to you.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I'm the last small business owner in the Senate Democratic Caucus. I mean, Guy Palumbo used to be in there with me last year, but he left last year. And so my fear is, if I'm not in the room, there's a lot of groupthink, you know, where people come up with ideas and then the small business perspective is not shared of why that idea could have negative consequences on small business owners throughout our state. And this unemployment insurance issue we're dealing with right now is case in point. Like, I'm the only member of the Senate Democratic Caucus talking to people about unemployment insurance rates next year and how much they're going to go up. I'm the only member who's advocating that our federal CARES Act dollars, the money we have left, should go into the UI trust fund, because these businesses had to close for the public safety of Washington residents. They weren't doing it because they're bad business owners. They were doing it to step up and help protect fellow Washington residents. And we should be getting unemployment insurance funds to help them out. So I'm running again because I want to make sure that voice is in that room, to make sure we're having all policy discussions, you know, and the small business voice is heard. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ken, we will turn to you for a 1-minute closing remark.
Thank you. I want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity today. I appreciate it. You know, I moved from Seattle to Maple Valley over 10 years ago. I had just gotten married. I was getting ready to become a father. This city it's a great place to make a home and raise a family, because we share a lot of common values, and a lot of times we even vote the same. So I'm the only Republican that has run in both the primary and the general elections this cycle, and I hope I'm not the last one willing to do so. Representative Ramos raised 5 times more money than me. His coming from public sector unions that want higher taxes and bigger government. And my supporters have been myself primarily, and small business people and families that are concerned about our future. So I humbly ask you for your vote, so that you have a real choice today for somebody who could better represent those values in Olympia tomorrow. Thank you very much, and please go to kenmaninsky.com.
Thank you. And Bill?
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here. Just to touch on a couple of things we talked about earlier, to know that I have been a small businessman myself, and I grew up with my mom, who ran her own business for 62 years. I don't know many people who can make that claim, that they ran a business for 62 years. And I was with her every Sunday as she was writing those payrolls out, and sometimes having a harder time than others. These are the things we look at in the community. Also, my background, that I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for 30 years. I'm working very hard in the area of climate change and also protecting our forests. Many of you noticed we couldn't breathe for a couple of weeks earlier this year. I'm working very much with the Department of Natural Resources and other folks to help create better, healthy forests in our state. Is a big thing that is very important to me, and I know all of you as well. So I will continue to represent you. Don't listen to what other folks say about me. Look at what I have to say. Ask me yourself, because folks can say anything they want, but it matters what I say and how you look at my website and take a look. Thank you very much. Been a pleasure being here with you.
Great. Thank you to all 4 of you. We really appreciate and value your time being here. We know it's a busy season. So thank you very much. And at this time, if you guys want, you can sign off, or you can mute your screens or go dark. And then we will turn to Jesse Jensen, who is running against Kim Schreier. And that is for the United States House of Representatives for the 8th Congressional District. And just so that everybody knows, we did invite both candidates for the position to be here, and Representative Schreier was unable to be here. However, Jesse is with us, and so we will give him the opportunity to answer questions and for us to hear from him. So thank you, Jesse, for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and appreciate you holding the forum. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So what we will do is we will have Jesse introduce himself, and then we're going to ask him a series of questions before he makes a closing remark, and then we will be done. So go ahead, please, Jesse, give us a 1-minute introduction.
Great. Well, thank you again. My name is 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Sorry.
I'll take the extra minute.
I'll
That's
just short
great.
you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So again, my name is Jesse Jensen. I'm running for the 8th Congressional District, and I want to be a servant leader for the 8th Congressional. I was the son of a pastor, grew up in small town America. I went to Washington, D.C. to work for another Senate leader, servant leader rather, and ended up driving him to Walter Reed Medical Institute in 2007, where I met a young man who had stepped on an IED and sadly lost both of his legs, but looked Senator Thune and I in the eye and said, all I want to do is go back to Iraq and be with my guys. I shortly thereafter enlisted in the Army, became an Army officer, a captain in the infantry, deployed 4 combat tours, 3 with the Joint Special Operations Command, and earned 2 Bronze Stars for service doing so. I'm running in this race to fight to bring back jobs, to increase broadband access, and to fight for law and order that brings justice for all under the law. My first 100 days, if I am honored to be elected, I'm going to fight for a public-private partnership to increase the height of Stampede Pass. that will allow us to double stack shipping containers and provide crucial access for markets for our central Washington orchardists and farmers. We'll create 100 family wage jobs in Ellensburg, and we'll reduce traffic on this side of the Cascades by reducing the number of semi-trailers that are on the roads. I also want to fight for universal broadband access to bring Washington State and the rest of the country into the 21st century, ensuring that we close that homework gap and make sure that communities of color and rural communities have access to broadband access. And finally, I want to defend the police by making sure that they have the funding required. My opponent has cut $600 million from criminal justice assistance grants at the federal level and is endorsed by the Indivisible movement that calls for the defunding of the police. I am going to be an independent leader for the 8th Congressional District. I'm proud to have the endorsements of Dave Reichert, Senator Slade Gorton, Rob McKenna, a host of others you can find at our website, jessejensen2020.com. When I was talking to Senator Gorton before he passed, he said, Jesse, don't forget to fight for the little guy. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So again, I'm going to be a servant leader. I'm going to fight for my 3 kids just as hard as I will fight for yours. And I want to make sure that small businesses' interests are protected here in the 8th Congressional. So thank you again, and I humbly ask for your vote and for your support.
Great. Thank you. That was well timed. That was right down to the second.
I'm glad I had 2 minutes.
There you go. So first up, we are going to discuss our current political environment. As we know, this current political environment is highly volatile. What's your track record for effective bipartisan work resulting in actual change? In the event you have not served, we know this is your first position that you're running for, I believe so. What is your professional past? What have you done in the past that demonstrates competency in this skill set for bipartisan work?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I would point to my military record. 7 years in Joint Special Operations Command. No one asked me if I was a Republican or a Democrat. They just told me to go take a hill. I'm proudest, in fact, of my track record of bringing home every service member that served directly under my command home. I got my MBA from Columbia Business School. Again, no one there asked me what my political affiliation was. I've worked for Microsoft as a program manager, for Amazon as a senior program manager, where I had $100 million profit and loss. I've worked as a regional operations director for a kidney dialysis company. I had 13 different clinics across the 8th Congressional District. Again, only focused on improving the bottom line and improving healthcare outcomes. I'm also signed on to the With Honor Pledge. With Honor is a bipartisan group that looks to bring more former military members into Congress. And as part of that pledge, I've agreed to sponsor a piece of legislation from the other party once a month and sit down with another member from the other political party once a week to get stuff done. I'm going to compromise. I'm going to get things accomplished. Look at my track record in the military and business to see evidence of that.
Great. Thank you so much. As you probably know, transportation funding is a constant concern for our region. How would you envision advocating for this region specifically to obtain federal dollars, and what would your priorities be? And of course, you know, we really want to hear about Maple Valley and Black Diamond.
Of course. So you see the traffic in Maple Valley and Black Diamond area. And, you know, a lot of that is coming from semi-trailers and traffic that's, you know, coming into the Northwest Seaport Alliance. And I spoke about that briefly at the top, but I want to increase the height of Stampede Pass to make sure that we're reducing congestion. Additionally, I will fight for federal dollars for all of Western Washington. I think that, additionally, one of the things that the current representation is not doing is getting on the phone every single day with the Secretary of Transportation and fighting for those dollars. I guarantee if it's a President Trump or President Biden, whoever the Secretary of Transportation is going to know who Congressman Jensen is because he's going to get a phone call every single day fighting to make sure that we get our fair share of dollars and that we're fighting to reduce traffic. I lived in Bonnie Lake. I commuted up to Seattle. I lived across the 8th Congressional District, and I've driven 30,000 plus miles a year in commuting, and I know that traffic can be devastating. So I will fight every day to make sure that we're getting the funds needed.
Great, thank you. Moving to healthcare, please state your position on the Affordable Care Act. How would you ensure that everyone has access to affordable health care coverage? And we really like to hear your opinion on pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, so I firmly support the need to protect pre-existing conditions. I have not called for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That said, I think there is bipartisan agreement that there are a lot of flaws in that legislation and that needs to be fixed. My opponent, until she changed her website, has publicly called for Medicare for all, something that would cost $32 trillion and is so extreme that Joe Biden even disagrees with it. If the Supreme Court does strike down the Affordable Care Act, I think we need to have a plan. Go to my website, jessejensen2020.com, to see what my plan is. It's a thing called Guaranteed Catastrophic Care. It actually costs 44% less for a family of four making $60,000 living in Maple Valley than what they would be paying under the Affordable Care Act. It protects pre-existing conditions and ensures you have access to private insurance. So there are solutions out there, and I would encourage folks to go and take the time that it requires. It's a little bit wonky and in-depth reading, but I do think that we need a backup plan that won't bankrupt families and won't bankrupt our government, which I think that Congresswoman Schreier's plan does.
Thank you. And now I want to turn to another healthcare issue related to healthcare, which is COVID. So at this time, talks for the COVID relief stimulus are deadlocked. Assuming that this is still the case, and we know this is moving hourly, can you please address your perspective on COVID relief stimulus? Thank you.
Yeah, so generally, I think we need to protect lives and protect livelihoods. We need to treat those that have the virus, protect vulnerable populations, and contain the spread of the virus. I think there's folks on the far right that have forgotten the lives portion of that, and I think my opponent has forgotten the livelihoods portion of that. She did not go to Washington, D.C. to vote in person for payroll protection flexibility program. I will get on a plane and I will do that. I would also sign on to Jamie Herrera Butler's discharge petition to get payroll protection funding to small businesses. I'd also fight for liability protection for small businesses. I think that allowing companies to be sued for a global pandemic that would be very difficult to trace back to a specific business is wrong and would hurt small businesses. I would fight every day to make sure that we get the payroll protection funding. And, you know, I quite frankly am questioning why Congresswoman Schreier is not pressuring Nancy Pelosi to accept the $1.8 trillion in funding coming from the administration. That includes funds for local municipalities for safely getting kids back to school, and payroll protection funding that is much needed in our small business community.
Great, thank you. I have one last question for you that builds off of that, that we actually asked our prior candidates. Childcare and returning to school is an essential component for economic recovery. Washington State has a critical lack of childcare available to working adults, which makes it difficult to return to work as businesses start to reopen, not to mention the role that school closures play. How do you propose to support this critical industry in getting parents back to work?
Yeah, so I think we need, more funding. Certainly, we need to make sure that the funding that we do have is applied appropriately. And I think at its core, we need to get schools back open. Right now, that's a big sticking point, and we need to safely do so. We need to figure out ways, while following science, wearing masks, to get our kids back to school, protect our children, and to protect the teachers and staff as part of that. They're doing great work by teaching our kids. But there's more and more evidence that show that the infection rate in our schools is actually much lower than it is in the broad community. I myself, my wife and I have made the decision to put our 4.5-year-old back into preschool in Orting. And they're washing their hands, they're wearing masks, they're doing things safely and keeping my son safe. And we need to, again, there's talk of a K-shaped recovery. So those folks that have broadband access can afford to send their kids, bring in tutors, are doing much better than the folks that are working on front lines that don't have those opportunities. And if we're going to get our economy going again, we need to get our schools going again. We need to do so safely.
Great, thank you. So we're going to allow you to have a closing remark, please. Just addressing anything that perhaps I didn't bring up that you would like to have the viewers learn about from you. So go ahead.
Well, great. Thank you again for the opportunity. Again, I will be a servant leader for the 8th Congressional District, and I'll always show up. You have a choice between servant leadership and, as evidenced by my opponent's absence in this forum, absentee leadership. Congresswoman Schreier has skipped 6 votes. She supports a Washington state income tax, and she recently doubled down on a carbon tax. She is outside of the mainstream, and she's hurt small businesses, including her sponsorship of the PRO Act that would essentially take California's AB 5 bill and make it the law of the land, which would destroy small businesses here in our state. So again, I want to be a servant leader. I will fight for you like I did in the Army. I will fight for you like I did in the business world to make sure that we're protecting every single man, woman, and child in the 8th Congressional District. I encourage you to go to my website, jessejensen2020.com, JESSEJENSEN2020.com to learn more. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I humbly ask for everyone watching's vote. Ballots are due by November 3rd. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. We appreciate you being here. And Erica, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to wrap us up.
Sure. Thank you so much. Want to appreciate all the candidates taking time. Like Griffin said, it's crazy kind of last couple weeks here, and it means a lot that you feel it's important enough to come and talk to our constituents here on the call. And again, thank you to Griffin for all your hard work and just by being an awesome moderator. You are good at this, so we really appreciate your help. And just as a quick reminder, just make sure to keep an eye out for our virtual auction starting on Monday. We've got awesome items for bid out there for bids. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions or want any information, just feel free to contact us at the chamber here, ceo@maplevalley.org, and I can get you connected with anybody here that has been on the call today. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Great. Thank you.